As you can see, Captain Kim explained, lifting an assault rifle, our standard infantry weapons use chemical propellants to launch metal projectiles at high velocity. She demonstrated the loading mechanism with practiced hands. Admiral Day, the Confederation's military representative, watched with barely hidden disdain. His four eyes blinked in sequence as he leaned toward Commander Sun, his aide. These projectile weapons are quaint relics, Day remarked, not bothering to lower his voice translator. They still rely on explosions and metal. How primitive. Captain, Kim pretended not to hear as she continued the presentation. She'd been warned about alien arrogance, but experiencing it firsthand made her stomach tight with anger. Still, she had her orders. Maintain diplomacy at all costs. At the next table, Major Park demonstrated close combat techniques. He moved with fluid grace, showing how human soldiers trained in hand-to-hand fighting as backup for when technology failed. This is why each soldier carries a combat knife, Major Park explained, displaying the carbon steel blade. Even without ammunition or power, a human soldier remains effective. Admiral Day interrupted with a dismissive wave of his long-fingered hand. Our species abandoned physical combat centuries ago. Why exhaust yourselves with such barbaric training when drones and neural interfaces exist? The Confederation representatives exchanged knowing looks. They stood surrounding their showcase, sleek pulse rifles that fired energy beams, personal shields that could stop most projectiles, and helmet displays with targeting systems far beyond Earth technology. Perhaps you'd care to demonstrate your weapons, Colonel Lee suggested smoothly, trying to redirect the conversation. Admiral Day nodded, signaling to his team. A Confederation soldier stepped forward, activating a rifle that hummed with power. The demonstration target, a thick metal plate, vaporized instantly with a flash of purple light. Energy-based weaponry, Admiral Day explained with obvious pride. No recoil, no projectiles to manufacture, and powered by our ships. We haven't used physical ammunition in over 300 years. Captain Kim nodded politely, though her mind raced. The weapon was impressive, but she noticed how it needed a moment to recharge between shots. She filed that observation away. "And your armor?" she asked. Commander Sun tapped his chest plate. "Reactive shield technology. It can stop any projectile. Your weapons might fire." He said this with such certainty that several human officers exchanged glances. The demonstration continued for another hour, with Earth showing its nuclear capabilities, air and sea power, and space defense systems. The aliens remained unimpressed throughout, occasionally whispering among themselves. Finally, they gathered in the UN's conference room for formal talks. The human delegation sat opposite the aliens, with translators and diplomatic staff nearby. The tension in the room felt thick enough to cut. Admiral Day cleared his throat, a strange bubbling sound. "The Confederation has reviewed your military capabilities. While charming in their historical significance, they fall short of galactic standards." Colonel Lee maintained a perfect poker face. "We understand our technology differs from yours." "Indeed," Admiral Day continued. "The galaxy can be dangerous. Many species would view Earth as vulnerable. The Confederation offers protection." He slid a data tablet across the table. Colonel Lee reviewed it carefully, his expression darkening. Slightly as he read, "These terms would make Earth a protected territory," Colonel Lee observed. "We would provide resources, allow Confederation bases on our soil, and defer to your authority in interstellar matters." Admiral Day smiled, showing rows of small teeth. "A standard arrangement for developing worlds. We've protected many species." "This way. You mean servant species," Major Park muttered, earning a sharp look from Colonel Lee. "We appreciate your offer," Colonel Lee said diplomatically, "but Earth has always maintained its independence. We would prefer to join as equals, not as a protected territory." The aliens exchanged looks that needed no translation, amusement mixed with condescension. "Consider carefully," Admiral Day said, rising to his impressive height. "The galaxy contains many dangers your primitive weapons cannot handle. The Mook Raiders, for instance, would see your world as easy prey." Colonel Lee recognized the veiled threat for what it was. The Confederation wasn't offering protection. They were demanding submission while dangling the threat of these Mook Raiders as motivation. We'll discuss your proposal with Earth's governments, Colonel Lee responded, keeping his voice steady despite his anger. The meeting concluded with forced pleasantries. As the aliens departed to their ship, Captain Kim moved beside Colonel Lee. "They think we're helpless children," she whispered. Colonel Lee nodded, watching the alien ship rise into the clouds. "Let them think that. History is full of advanced forces underestimating primitive ones." He smiled slightly. "And humans have always been good at surprising those who underestimate us." In their ship above Earth, Admiral Day laughed as he reviewed the meeting with his staff. "They still use gunpowder and metal. I haven't seen weapons that primitive since museum visits as a child." Commander Sun nodded in agreement. "Their protection of Earth will bring valuable resources to the Confederation with minimal effort." Neither of them realized that humans had been fighting and adapting for thousands of years, and neither understood that sometimes the oldest weapons proved most reliable when new technology failed. 3 months had passed since the tense first meeting with the Galactic Confederation. Earth's governments had reluctantly accepted a watered-down protection agreement, not the full servitude Admiral Day had proposed, but enough to station Confederation ships in Earth's solar system as defense partners. The lunar colony sparkled against the black sky, home to nearly 10,000 humans. Mining operations, research facilities, and the new interstellar communications array made it humanity's proudest achievement beyond Earth. General Han stood in the colony's command center, reviewing reports when the emergency alarms suddenly blared to life. Red warning lights bathed the room as officers rushed to their stations. "What's happening?" General Han demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Lieutenant Jin looked up from her console, face pale. "Multiple unknown ships just appeared near the outer defense perimeter. They're not responding to hails." The main screen showed grainy images of ships, unlike the sleek Confederation vessels. These were angular, with spiked protrusions and dark hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Where are our Confederation protectors?" General Han asked. Communications Officer Park worked frantically at his station. "The Confederation Defense Fleet is reporting technical difficulties. Their weapon systems are offline." A new voice cut through the channel. Admiral Day, his usual arrogance replaced by what sounded like irritation. "We are experiencing unexpected interference with our energy grid. The ships will require reset protocols." The sleek alien ship hovered above the United Nations headquarters in New York, its silver hull gleaming in the morning sun. It had been 3 weeks since the Galactic Confederation made first contact with Earth, and today was the formal military exchange. Captain Kim stood tall despite feeling small next to the towering blue-skinned aliens. The demonstration area had been set up with care, tables displaying Earth's most advanced weapons systems alongside historical pieces showing human military evolution. Reset protocols? General Han couldn't believe what he was hearing. "There. Are hostile ships approaching our colony?" The screen flickered, showing new information. The unknown vessels had launched smaller craft, heading straight for the lunar surface. "These are Mook Raiders," Admiral Day's voice explained, "a troublesome species from the outer systems. Their technology specializes in disrupting energy-based systems." General Han slammed his fist on the console. "Where is the protection we were promised?" There was a pause before Admiral Day's cold reply. "Perhaps humans should have accepted our initial terms. Full protection is reserved for full members of the Confederation. Your limited agreement has corresponding limited protection." The connection cut out as a new alarm sounded. Lieutenant Jin looked up in horror. "Sir, we're getting emergency signals from Mars Colony, Europa Station, the asteroid mining operations, and the orbital platform. They're all under attack simultaneously." General Han's mind raced. 5 colonies under attack at once, and the mighty Confederation fleet drifting uselessly in space. This was no coincidence. "Get me Earth Command now," he ordered. Minutes later, he was connected to Commander Choi of Earth's United Defense Force. Her face on the screen showed she already understood the situation. "The Confederation's technology has been neutralized," General Han reported. "These Mook Raiders somehow knew exactly how to disable them." Commander Choi nodded grimly. "We're receiving the same reports from all outposts. Communications Director Yoon has confirmed 5 colonies under simultaneous attack. This isn't random, it's coordinated. Do you think the Confederation set us up? General Han asked quietly. I'm not jumping to conspiracies yet, Commander Choi replied, but they certainly oversold their protection capabilities. Their fancy energy weapons and shields are useless right now. On the screen behind her, General Han could see the busy Earth Command Center mobilizing. Unlike the Confederation's sleek, automated systems, Earth Command looked almost primitive, with its backup analog equipment and hardened electronics. What's our defense plan? General Han asked. Commander Choi's expression hardened with determination. We're activating our own defenses, the ones the Confederation called outdated. Ballistic weapons don't rely on the energy systems the Mookie. Hard jamming. General Han felt a surge of hope. While the lunar colony had adopted some Confederation technology, they had maintained their original Earth defense systems as backups. What about our other colonies? He asked. All human settlements maintained their conventional weapons, Commander Choi explained. Admiral Day mocked us for it, but right now, those primitive weapons are our only defense. I've ordered all outposts to switch to conventional systems immediately. The screen showed movement behind Commander Choi, officers rushing to stations, communications being established with Earth's military bases worldwide. Unlike the Confederation's centralized command, Earth's defenses were distributed, redundant, designed to function even when parts failed. The muck ships are entering lunar orbit, Lieutenant Jin reported tensely. First wave of landing craft approaching the northeastern quadrant. General Han made his decision. Activate our ballistic defense grid, arm all personnel with conventional weapons, and prepare the surprise package. The surprise package was something the lunar colony had kept hidden from their Confederation allies, a series of old-fashioned railguns that used magnetic acceleration rather than energy weapons. Simple technology by galactic standards, but deadly effective and immune to energy disruption. On the command screen, General Han watched as Commander Choi mobilized Earth's global defense network. Ships that had been deemed too primitive for space combat were being launched, vessels with physical armor instead of energy shields, kinetic weapons instead of pulse cannons. The Mook have never faced humans before, Commander Choi said, her voice steely with resolve. We've spent our entire history fighting each other. We've learned a few things about warfare they couldn't possibly understand. The first impacts rocked the lunar colony as Muck landing craft touched down. General Han steadied himself against his console. Prepare all conventional weapons, Commander Choi ordered, her voice carrying across all human settlements in the solar system. The aliens are about to learn why humanity survived its own violent history. As the order spread throughout human space, something remarkable happened. Fear gave way to determination. Across 5 colonies, humans prepared to defend themselves not with borrowed advanced technology, but with the tools and tactics they had refined through centuries of conflict. The Mook Raiders, expecting easy targets with disabled defenses, were about to face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, an enemy that didn't rely solely on energy shields and automated systems, an enemy that knew how to fight with whatever weapons were at hand, an enemy that refused to surrender. The red dust of Mars swirled outside the reinforced windows of Colony Dome Alpha. Captain Moon crouched in the command bunker, watching tactical displays as alarms wailed throughout the settlement. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. "Status report," he demanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. Sergeant Bay checked the communications panel. Confederation defense ships have gone. Completely dark. Their energy weapons and shields are non-responsive. She pointed to the screen showing 3 sleek alien vessels drifting uselessly in Mars orbit, their elegant designs now nothing more than expensive space junk. Through the observation port, Captain Moon could see the Mook landing craft touching down angular black ships that reminded him of ancient Earth insects. Unlike the smooth, almost artistic Confederation vessels, these were clearly built for war. They knew exactly how to neutralize the Confederation technology, Captain Moon muttered. This was planned. The bunker shook as something heavy impacted nearby. Status indicators for the colony's outer dome flickered from green to yellow. "Breach in Sector 7, reported Communications Officer Wu. Mook forces entering through the agricultural dome. Captain Moon studied the colony schematic. Mars Colony was humanity's second-largest off-world settlement, home to 12,000 people, scientists, engineers, farmers, and families. Most were civilians with basic emergency training. His security force numbered only 200. "Where are the Confederation ground troops?" he asked. Officer Wu shook her head. "Their powered armor systems are offline. They're stranded in their barracks without functioning weapons or communications." So much for superior technology, Captain Moon thought bitterly. The aliens who had mocked human weapons as primitive were now helpless, while those same primitive weapons remained the colony's only defense. "Ready the ground teams," he ordered Sergeant Bay. "All security personnel to conventional weapons only. No energy weapons. They'll be useless against the Mook jamming." Sergeant Bay nodded sharply and began transmitting orders. Throughout the colony, hidden armories were being unlocked. When the Confederation had arrived, they'd insisted on replacing human weapons with their energy-based technology. Captain Moon had complied, officially. Unofficially, he'd maintained a stockpile of obsolete ballistic weapons. Those obsolete weapons were now the colony's only hope. "What about the civilians?" asked Officer Wu. "Emergency Protocol Delta," Captain Moon replied. "Move them to the inner secure zones and distribute the backup supplies." Protocol Delta was something they'd drilled but never expected to use, the contingency for when all advanced systems failed. Mechanical locks instead of electronic, chemical lights instead of power-based, and weapons that worked without computers or energy cells. The bunker shook again as another impact hit nearby. "Sir!" Sergeant Bay called out. "Lieutenant Kang's squad is in position near the breach point." Captain Moon activated the secure radio, old technology using frequencies the muck jammers weren't targeting. "Lieutenant Kang, report." Lieutenant Kang's voice came through with static, but was clear enough. "In position at Junction 12, sir. We can see the Mook forces entering through the agricultural dome. They're moving in formation toward the residential sectors." "What are we looking at?" Captain Moon asked. "About 30 Mook soldiers in the first wave," Lieutenant Kang reported. "Tall, four-armed beings in some kind of armored exoskeletons. They're carrying energy weapons, but they seem to be using them as clubs. Maybe their weapons are affected by their own jamming technology." Captain Moon considered this information. "Hold position. Let them advance past Junction 14, then cut off their retreat. We need to isolate and eliminate this first group before reinforcements arrive." "Understood, sir." Meanwhile, across the colony, security teams were deploying with a mix of weapons that would have looked more at home in a historical museum than a space colony. Ballistic rifles with mechanical firing mechanisms, pump-action shotguns, even some crossbows from the recreation department. Lieutenant Kang signaled her 15-person squad to move silently through the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the colony. These service corridors, designed for technicians to access vital systems, now served as perfect infiltration routes. The Mook, relying on their advanced scanning technology, now hampered by their own jamming, had no idea the tunnels existed. "They're passing Junction 14, whispered Corporal Jin, watching through a small observation port. "Moving toward the central hub." Lieutenant Kang gave the hand signal to advance. Her squad moved silently through the tunnels, emerging from maintenance hatches behind the muck formation. The aliens had no rear guard. They clearly expected no resistance from a supposedly defenseless colony. "On my mark," Lieutenant Kang whispered into her radio. Similar teams were positioning around the colony, ready to engage the invaders. 3, 2, 1, mark! The first volley of ballistic fire took the muck completely by surprise. Bullets, actual metal projectiles, tore through the alien ranks. Their personal shields, designed to stop energy weapons, offered little protection against kinetic projectiles moving at supersonic speeds. The Mook scattered, trying to return fire with weapons that wouldn't function. Lieutenant Kang led her squad forward, firing controlled bursts from her rifle. Years of training on Earth, insisted upon by officers who believed in preparation for all scenarios, now paid off. "Move to Phase 2, Captain Moon ordered over the radio from the command bunker. Throughout the colony, hidden defense systems activated, not the fancy energy turrets installed by the Confederation, but simple mechanical spring-loaded traps and barriers that slammed into place, dividing the muck forces into smaller, more manageable groups. The aliens fought back ferociously. What they lacked in functioning weapons, they made up for with physical strength. Their forearms and armored exoskeletons made them formidable opponents in close combat. "We're running low on ammunition, sir," Lieutenant Kang reported after 30 minutes of intense fighting. Her squad had eliminated 12 muck soldiers, but was now facing a group of especially large warriors who had cornered them in the hydroponics section. "Switch to close-quarter tactics," Captain Moon ordered. "Remember your training." Lieutenant Kang holstered her empty rifle and drew her combat knife, the same knife Admiral Day had laughed at during the military exchange. "Follow my lead," she told her squad. The Mook charged, expecting easy victory against apparently disarmed humans. They didn't understand that every human security officer had trained extensively in hand-to-hand combat. While the Confederation had abandoned physical combat centuries ago, humans had never stopped preparing for the worst. Lieutenant Kang ducked under a swing from a massive Mook warrior, slashing her knife across the joint in its exoskeleton. The alien howled as Lieutenant Kang followed with a precision strike to what intelligence suggested was a vulnerable nerve cluster. The massive being collapsed. Around her, her squad engaged with similar tactics, fighting with knives, improvised weapons, and hand-to-hand techniques against physically superior opponents. In the command bunker, Captain Moon watched through security feeds as similar scenes played out across the colony. Humans, supposedly primitive and technologically inferior, were holding their ground against an enemy that had expected easy victory. "Sir," Officer Wu called out, "we're intercepting Mook communications. Their jamming doesn't affect our analog receivers." The speakers crackled with a harsh, translated voice. "Impossible! How are they fighting without functional weapons? Where are their energy shields?" Another voice responded. "They're using projectile weapons and fighting with blades. Central Command never mentioned this capability." The transmission cut off abruptly. Minutes later, Officer Wu reported, "Mook forces are retreating to their ships. They're pulling back from all sectors." Throughout the colony, human defenders watched in disbelief as the alien invaders fled, not in an orderly withdrawal, but in what could only be described as a panicked retreat. "Did we just win?" Sergeant Bay asked in amazement. Captain Moon allowed himself a small smile. "Round one, at least." He activated the colony-wide communication system. "All units, secure your positions and tend to the wounded. This may only be a temporary retreat." As the dust settled, reports came in from across the colony. The humans had suffered casualties, but far fewer than expected. The Mook had clearly anticipated defenseless victims, not organized resistance. "Sir," Sergeant Bay reported, "we are receiving transmissions from Lunar Colony and Europa Station. They're reporting similar muck retreats. It seems they weren't prepared for humans to fight back effectively." Captain Moon nodded, looking at the Confederation ship still drifting uselessly in orbit. The aliens who had called humans primitive were now witnessing firsthand what humanity's long, violent history had produced, a species that never relied solely on a single technology, that always prepared for the worst, and that knew how to adapt and overcome when everything else failed. The battle for Mars Colony was far from over, but the first engagement had delivered a clear message. Humans were not the easy prey the galaxy thought them to be. Admiral Day stood frozen in disbelief as he watched the battle feeds streaming into the Confederation Command Center. Around him, his staff moved in silent shock, their earlier confidence replaced by confusion and worry. "This can't be happening," Commander Sun whispered, staring at the screens showing muck forces retreating from Earth outposts across the solar system. Admiral Day leaned closer to one particular display showing human defenders on Mars Colony. "They're using chemical explosives and mechanical triggers," he told Commander Sun, his voice a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. "No wonder the Mook jamming is ineffective against them. Their weapons don't rely on our power sources or targeting systems." The tactical displays told a remarkable story. After the initial Mook assault had neutralized all energy-based Confederation defenses, the aliens had expected easy victory. Instead, human colonies were not only holding their ground, but beginning to push back. "Bring up the Europa Station feed," Admiral Day ordered. The main screen shifted to show the ice-covered moon. Of Jupiter, Europa Station had been considered the most vulnerable human outpost, small, isolated, with minimal defenses. The Confederation had stationed only a token force there, considering it too remote to defend effectively. Yet the feed showed human security teams moving with practiced precision through the station's corridors. Unlike the Confederation soldiers, with their disabled powered armor, the humans wore simple environmental suits reinforced with what looked like pieces of metal armor strapped to vital areas. "Are those steel plates?" Commander Sun asked incredulously. "Primitive but effective," Admiral Day admitted. "They don't require power to stop a blade or projectile." The battle for Europa Station took an unexpected turn when the Mook deployed what appeared to be biological weapons, canisters releasing a green mist into the station's atmosphere. "The humans are finished," one of Day's officers remarked. "No species survives Mook bioagents without advanced countermeasures." But to everyone's shock, teams of humans in bulky suits quickly deployed throughout the affected sections. The feeds identified them as Dr. Gill's CBRN teams, specialists trained to handle chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. "They're neutralizing the agents," Commander Sun reported with astonishment. "How is this possible? The Mook bioweapons are designed to overwhelm any defense system." On another screen, Colonel Joe, the human officer assigned as liaison to the Confederation fleet, entered the command center. Unlike the aliens with their sleek uniforms, he wore what looked like a relic from a museum, a ballistic vest over a standard uniform, with a mechanical sidearm holstered at his hip. "Your species seems well prepared for these attacks," Admiral Day remarked, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. Colonel Joe nodded grimly. "Humans have prepared for such attacks for centuries," he explained to the amazed aliens. "During our Cold War period alone, we developed extensive protocols for chemical and biological warfare. Every soldier receives basic CBRN training. What you're seeing now are specialized teams that drill for exactly these scenarios." Admiral Day struggled to process this information. His species had abandoned such primitive concerns thousands of years ago, relying entirely on automated defense systems and energy shields that the Mook had so easily disabled. "But your technology is so basic," Commander Sun protested. "How can you possibly—" "Technology fails," Colonel Joe interrupted simply. "Humans never forgot that lesson." On the screens, the battle continued across multiple fronts. The lunar colony was now completely secured, with Mook forces in full retreat. Mars colony had pushed the invaders back to their landing craft. Even the small research outpost on Titan was reporting success against the alien attackers. A new alert drew everyone's attention to the asteroid mining operation near Ceres. Captain Song, commander of E. The mining security detail had organized a counter-offensive using mining equipment repurposed as weapons. The feed showed humans in industrial exoskeletons charging Mook positions, wielding drilling equipment that tore through alien armor. "Those tactics," Admiral Day murmured, studying the formations. "They seem familiar somehow." Colonel Joe nodded. "Captain Song is a military history specialist. She's using tactics from ancient Earth military history, specifically a pincer movement developed by a general named Hannibal over 3,000 years ago." 3,000 years. The number struck Admiral Day like a physical blow. His own civilization had been at peace for so long that actual combat tactics were studied only as historical curiosities. Yet humans had been refining the art of warfare for millennia. "Computer," Admiral Day ordered suddenly. "Access Earth historical military archives, download all available data." The command center's screens filled with information, battle analyses, tactical manuals, training protocols spanning thousands of years of human conflict. Admiral Day stared in growing humility at the wealth of knowledge before him. Wars fought with sticks and stones, wars fought with swords and shields, wars fought with gunpowder and steel. Wars fought with atoms and algorithms. Each conflict had taught humanity lessons about survival, about adaptation, about the fundamental truth that Admiral Day was only now beginning to understand. True military strength came not from having the most advanced technology, but from knowing how to fight when that technology failed. They never stopped preparing for the worst, he said quietly. While we grew complacent with our advanced systems, they kept training as if everything could fail at any moment. Commander Sun looked troubled. But they're still using projectile weapons and physical combat. We abandoned those as barbaric centuries ago. And now we drift helplessly while humans defend our ships with their barbaric methods, Admiral Day replied sharply. The screens showed new developments across the solar system. The Mook forces were in full retreat at every battlefront. Their jamming technology, so effective against the Confederation's energy weapons, had proven useless against human ballistic weapons, mechanical traps, and hand-to-hand combat skills. Moreover, the humans had begun adapting Mook and Confederation technology, creating hybrid weapons on the battlefield. In one remarkable scene, a human engineer had attached a Confederation energy cell to a human rifle, creating an improvised weapon that delivered devastating results against the retreating Mook. Admiral Day watched as the tide of battle turned, decisively in humanity's favor. The species he had dismissed as primitive was demonstrating a resourcefulness and adaptability that left him humbled. "We have much to learn from them," he admitted quietly to Commander Sun. The greatest revelation was not just that humans could fight effectively with simple weapons, but that they had maintained redundant systems all along. They had never abandoned the old ways, even as they embraced the new. Every human settlement had backup systems that required no power, no computers, no advanced technology at all. Just human ingenuity and the hard-won wisdom of thousands of years of conflict. As Admiral Day continued downloading Earth's military archives, he began to understand what his species had lost in its rush toward technological advancement. They had forgotten the fundamental lessons that humans had paid for in blood countless times throughout their history. Never rely on a single advantage, always prepare for the worst, and never, ever underestimate a species that has survived its own violent history. The final battle for Centauri Station would become a legendary moment in human military history. Everything came down to pure human adaptability and unconventional thinking. Major Lee stood on the command deck, watching the complex battle unfold. Traditional military wisdom suggested they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. The alien Muck forces had superior technology, advanced energy shields, and a reputation for crushing any resistance. But humans had something unexpected: creativity and flexibility. When digital docking systems completely failed, Lieutenant Wei's team didn't panic. Instead, they pulled out old-school grappling equipment, simple metal hooks and robust climbing gear. While advanced alien systems crashed, human manual skills became their ultimate weapon. The boarding party moved with surprising grace. Zero gravity. Combat, something most galactic species had forgotten, was second nature to these trained soldiers. They navigated tight spaces, used minimal equipment, and struck with precision. The Mook commanders were shocked. Their entire strategy relied on opponents who would fight using standard technological approaches. They never anticipated an enemy who could seamlessly switch between high-tech and basic survival techniques. Admiral Kim watched the operation, understanding something profound was happening. Humans weren't just fighting, they were demonstrating a unique approach to problem-solving that transcended traditional military doctrine. When the battle concluded, the human victory was complete and stunning. The Confederation's leadership gathered, discussing what they'd witnessed. Their conversations revealed a growing respect for humanity's unique capabilities. "We've underestimated them," one senior official admitted. "Their ability to adapt is extraordinary." The human military team hadn't just won a battle, they'd fundamentally changed how galactic civilizations would view warfare, strategy, and human potential. Within months, human military advisors became the most requested personnel across different planetary forces. Their training methods, which combined technological understanding with fundamental survival skills, revolutionized military preparation. Training camps started incorporating human-designed programs. Soldiers learned not just to rely on advanced technology, but to think critically when systems failed. They practiced manual override techniques, physical conditioning, and psychological resilience. The Confederation's request was clear. Earth wasn't just welcome as a member. They were now seen as essential strategic partners. What began as a desperate battle at Centauri Station had transformed into a turning point for human recognition in the galactic community. No longer would humans be seen as primitive or limited. They were now viewed as versatile, innovative, and absolutely critical to future interstellar cooperation. The legacy of that battle would be remembered for generations, a moment when human spirit and adaptability changed everything.